Will the corrupt DOJ prosecutions against former FBI Director James Comey and current New York Attorney General Letitia James be dismissed after an explosive disqualification hearing regarding Donald Trump's hand-picked, likely unlawfully picked federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsey Halligan, who before those cases had no experience working as a federal prosecutor, as a trial lawyer. I say explosive because we found out about missing grand jury portions that the judge seemed deeply concerned about, as we all should be. The judge was concerned about affidavits submitted by the Attorney General Pam Bondi saying she reviewed the full transcripts when the full transcripts were not ever made available to anybody. We're going to talk about what went down there, and you're going to want to hear this from myself and Michael Popok. We're also going to want to hear kind of our analysis right now as we're recording this over the weekend about the Epstein emails that were released from the Epstein estate, thanks to the great stick-to-itiveness and hard work of Democrats in the House Oversight Committee. Republicans were trying to bury all this stuff. To be clear, this is not the Epstein files. These are the Epstein emails, a very, very, very small subset of what's likely in the files. And this was in the possession not of the DOJ, although these emails probably exist there based upon all of the information the DOJ gathered over the course of the kind of 15, 16 years of investigation. But this stuff also resided with the Epstein estate. Of the 2,600 email threads, Donald Trump's name appeared on over half of them, and in some really damaging, grotesque, odd, bizarre, and ways that raise even more red flags. It has Donald Trump spiraling. Donald Trump has banished Marjorie Taylor Greene from MAGA for pushing for more release of Epstein information. Trump's been spiraling out of control. He lunged at a reporter. We'll go through what is in these emails, and we'll also talk about Donald Trump's plan to kind of not release the DOJ documents with a new wrinkle to it, where he has ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi to conduct an investigation of Democrats and said, go after these Democrats regarding the Epstein files and not me. I want you to go after these Democrats and go after JP Morgan Chase and go after this and that and the other. And so, as we will discuss on this episode, what the DOJ is likely going to say now in response to Congress saying we want these records is, well, now we can't give it to you because there's an ongoing criminal investigation into all of these things that Donald Trump ordered in order for Trump to protect himself. We'll get into that. We should also talk about the trickle-down corruption, or is it trickle-up, or just corruption trickling everywhere amongst these MAGA Republicans. We all know by now the government shutdown is over, and the Republicans in the Senate snuck in a provision to basically pay at least 8 Republican senators at least $500,000 each by making up a frivolous cause of action where they say that if special counsel Jack Smith's subpoenas, which were validly issued, validly authorized by courts in connections with legal proceedings, if they turned up the senator's phone number digits, not eavesdropping, not wiretapping, because that never happened at all, just the actual digits show up, that's $500,000 that the senators get to collect. And if it appears multiple times, they get $500,000 each time. And built into these cause of actions as well, it states that the United States government will waive all of its defenses. So basically, the senators, the Republican senators, will just be collecting money, $500,000, $1 million, maybe more, from the taxpayers based on a frivolous claim that they created. And it's never taken place before. This and more on Legal AF. Michael Popok, great to see you, sir.
You as well.
We have a lot of places where we could start. First off, it's great to see you. My suggestion is we just get right into it. I toss it to you. You break down the shenanigans, would be putting it lightly, but what the hell went down in this Lindsey Halligan disqualification hearing with missing transcripts. It seems Pam Bondi was lying when she said she reviewed the full transcripts. Judge Curry, the federal judge who's reviewing the disqualification motions, immediately asked, did the government turn over the prior memorandum from the old United States attorney saying that there's not evidence to support the prosecutions of James and Comey, which has not been produced yet in discovery by the DOJ? Wow. This has never existed like this before. But what else would you expect with Lindsey Halligan and Donald Trump?
Shenanigans and Halligan. We'll call it Shahalligans. She's going down. I mean, I'm not going to bury the lead. If Lindsey Halligan survives the hearing in front of Judge Curry on Wednesday, that we covered in detail, including having Adam Klasfeld of All Rise News, who went to Alexandria, Virginia, and reported on Legal AF from outside the courtroom. It was turbulent outside with a windy day for Adam Klasfeld, and inside the courtroom for the lawyers that were arguing for the government. And we have another thematic we're going to pull through today about conflicts of interest. We're going to talk about a number of them and kind of incestuous relationships. Henry Whitaker argued for the Department of Justice out of Maine Justice. He was the former Solicitor General in Florida when Pam Bondi was the Attorney General. So they go way back. They did not use one of their line prosecutors that they pulled in from North Carolina to argue the motion. That's going to be important in a moment. And then the lawyers for both Letitia James, Abby Lowell, and for James Comey, somebody from the office of Mr. Patrick Fitzgerald, argued in front of Curry. Judge Curry, sitting by designation, she came up from South Carolina because of conflicts related to the appointment of Halligan and the district court judges in Virginia, sort of right away jumped on the DOJ side and said she was not pleased with what she referred to as the missing grand jury transcripts. And Mr. Whitaker did not have a very good answer for that in the courtroom, which is going to frame for you something I'm covering right now on Legal AF, which is they tried to fix the record after the hearing ended yesterday with a new filing and a brand new piece of evidence backdated that Pam Bondi created and then is asking the judge to look at after the hearing is over without leave of court. That's a problem. It also indicates that they know they have a problem and they're trying desperately to bail out this sinking ship with their hands, and it's not working. So they get into court. Judge says, we're missing a transcript. I've ordered you twice to produce the transcripts and everything around the grand jury proceedings in both proceedings, mainly Comey, and you didn't do it. They said, what do you mean? Well, we're missing 2 hours of transcript. And Whitaker didn't say at the time, that's when the grand jury was deliberating, Your Honor, and there can't be a court reporter in there when that happens. He's like, no, I don't know anything. We've delivered everything. And she said, well, let's get down to it. 2 questions for you, Mr. Whitaker. One is, how could Attorney General Bondi ratify something if she doesn't know what happened? In other words, if there's, she had full understanding of the proceedings, and Curry cut him off and said she couldn't have because there's missing parts of the transcript. And then this is one of my favorite moments in that hearing. She said, knowing that Whitaker's from Florida, knowing that Aileen Cannon served a certain role in dismissing an indictment against Donald Trump because she found that a special counsel had not been confirmed by the United States Senate. That guy's name was Jack Smith. She said, let me ask you something while you're here. The case of Mar-a-Lago, how do you believe that and Judge Cannon's decision to dismiss an unconfirmed special counsel impacts this case? And there was a murmuring in the courtroom, according to Adam. And he said, well, it wouldn't be binding precedent here in this courtroom. So they're running away from the thing that got Donald Trump out from under his Mar-a-Lago decision. They don't like it as precedent when it comes to him trying to get these unqualified special prosecutor, U.S. attorneys through without Senate confirmation. So I love that aspect of it. Then the hearing ends well. It ended well for both Abby Lowell for Letitia James and the lawyer for James Comey, who got the last word because of the rebuttal aspect of the way they present these oral arguments, these hearings. And they jumped all over. Whitaker kept saying, he had this weird tick. He kept saying out loud, "It was a paper error. It was a clerical error. It was just a paper. It was just a paper. Like, what was the paper error? She was given the wrong title, but we fixed the title later. It was." And the judge said, "It's not. Stop saying that. It's not a clerical error. We're getting down to the heart of a statute that it looks like the president is trying to do an end run around." This is Abby Lowell's argument. And avoid Senate confirmation for U.S. attorneys. She focused a lot, as you and I suspected, on the grand jury transcripts because she's focused on remedy. Because I think she's already made up her mind. We'll know finally before Thanksgiving about whether she's properly appointed. Because to look to see if there's been a violation of Section 546, the statute about her appointment, it's easy. The facts are indisputed. There was a U.S. attorney on Inauguration Day. She quit. They put in a U.S. attorney as an interim, Eric Siebert. He quit or got fired because he wouldn't prosecute these cases. Then that's it. Under that rule, that's all you get as the Trump side, as the Attorney General side. It then goes to, under the clear language and the precedent of the statute and legislative history, it goes to the judges of the Eastern District of Virginia to pick the next one. They don't like that argument. They think they can keep picking another 120-day interim appointment, another 120-day interim appointment for like ad seriatim forever. So she didn't need the grand jury transcript to make that statutory analysis on an undisputed record. She can do that on summary judgment. She needs it to figure out what to do with the indictments. Are the indictments going to survive, or are they going to get kicked by her? And next week, even if she were to keep them in place, next week in front of the regular trial judges is the hearings on the motion to dismiss the indictments for vindictive prosecution, which is not in front of her. That's in front of the regular trial judges. So that's a next week thing. Why is this moving so fast? The trial of James Comey is in less than 2 months. It's January the 5th, and the trial of Letitia James is 3 weeks later. So all this has to get done. We're going to get a ruling by Curry before Thanksgiving. We're going to get a ruling on vindictive prosecution in the middle of December at the rate they're going as they fight over the documents. Now, one last thing. Hearing ends. Whitaker doesn't have good answers for most of the questions that are asked. They figure that out. And then they have another lawyer, Mr. Diaz, yesterday, file a brand new document. He had a weird name for it, too. It was like an informative memo attaching 2 declarations. One is Lindsey Halligan, who's identifying herself as the interim U.S. attorney, who says, "I was never alone with the grand jury, except there was always a court reporter, except when I had to leave when they deliberated, and that's the gap." I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that's the gap that the judge, having seen the whole thing, believes exists. She's a smart judge, senior status judge, been on the bench for 30 years. She knows when you deliberate, there's no transcript. So it was the rest of it that's missing. So I don't think that actually helped her at all. It actually invites more questions by the judge. But when a hearing is over and the record is closed, to submit additional info, like a new backdated memo from Pam Bondi, her second one, that says, "I know there's been some concern, but I've now looked at the transcript and I now ratify," meaning the thing happened in the past and I'm gonna bless it, with a brand new memo dated the day after the hearing. If I'm the lawyers for Letitia and for James Comey, I file a motion to strike as improper supplement to the record. And even if it opens it, then they get the opportunity to oppose that and maybe even have an opening of the evidentiary hearing, which is not going to help Lindsey Halligan at all, before this judge rules. I think this opened a can of worms for her. I think it was a major mistake. It just shows you how panicked they are that Lindsey Halligan is going down the drain.
Yeah, look, Judge Curry has seen likely thousands, potentially even tens of thousands of grand jury proceedings done the way they're supposed to be done. So clearly when she reviewed this transcript, she saw that something was missing. Now, when Lindsey Halligan says that nothing is missing, that could quite literally mean that Lindsey Halligan didn't submit the full transcript. And there's literally portions that took place that have been removed, deleted, or the court reporter was instructed not to be there or did not type what was going down. Or alternatively, what the judge has been getting at is that there's something that's missing that takes place in a grand jury proceeding that the judge didn't see. Perhaps that can be like instructing the jury on what the claims are and what their role is and what they're supposed to do. So, one theory I posit is this what happened, Popok, right after the witness closed, which was one FBI agent, and who the hell knows what this FBI agent testified to, because it will be an FBI agent testifying on hearsay. But the interesting thing for me is that the hearsay statements of the two witnesses will ultimately contradict what this corrupt DOJ is claiming that they're going to say, right? I mean, we've had McCabe on the MeidasTouch Network and the other witness, they've both said that James Comey never ordered them to go to the press, that to the extent they ever went to the press, they did it on their own. McCabe said that he had authorization to do it. The other guy, Richmond, said that he was never instructed to do so. So one of the main questions here is, how is it that they were able to get this indictment based on the fact that the two key witnesses contradict what's being said? The issue was whether when James Comey was testifying before the Senate, if he agreed with statements that he made a few years prior when he also appeared before Congress, that he did not authorize any individuals to go and speak with the press about, Donald Trump's potential Russia connections and Donald Trump's connections. But it's possible, Popok, that there's just missing a thing that you do with the grand jury. And so did the witness leave? And then basically Lindsey Halligan's hands him a piece of paper and then leaves the room and then says, just fill it out, versus explaining to them what the elements are that they have to find. That's a possibility that I think is something that she didn't do what normally goes down in a grand jury because she didn't know what she was doing.
I agree with you. There's no way, I don't think it's possible for Judge Curry to have mistaken the gap that's required for deliberation, which is when the grand jury is at its most secret, when they're in the room without lawyers and they deliberate, and there is no record of that. We never know that. That is sacrosanct. But there's no way that Judge Curry confused that with what she was referring to in the gap. And so I think they're scrambling. They're like, Lindsey, what do you think happened? This again, it's like asking somebody who's never been a federal prosecutor. I suggest she may have never been in federal court before. Her practice was fender bender, automobile law, insurance law. I'm not sure she was in a federal court before. So what happened? Oh, I think, I don't know. We'll put it down in an affidavit and we'll file it. And then I'll do a backdated document to try to save you. Hurry. I think it's interesting. I'm going to get your opinion on this. Whitaker, who was the advocate, is nowhere on the new filing. It was filed by a Mr. Diaz, who was not the advocate in the room. Like you and I handle a hearing, and then I got something I got to get off my chest and something I got to supplement. I'm signing the motion to, and they created this document I've never heard of in 35 years, an informative memo, as opposed to a motion to reopen hearing to provide supplemental evidence. That's a problem. Number of problems.
It's a big problem, and it seems that there's a lot of finger pointing going on behind the scenes, a lot of people tying themselves up into knots over the fact that this was done improperly, that there's not a legal basis to be bringing this, and you put someone with no experience. And so we haven't even got to not even the appetizer of what this case is even about yet, because we're dealing with whether or not the only person in the room was unlawfully in the room to begin with, okay? And what the hell did this person even say to the grand jury? Then we're going to be moving on next week to the issue of vindictive prosecution, which seems to be the biggest slam dunk if there were ever to be vindictive prosecution. Literally the president of the United States saying, yo, I'm a vindictive guy. I need you to prosecute based on my vindictiveness. Now, Trump didn't use those exact
Lindsey
words.
Halligan.
but if you gave me a fact pattern on a law exam or on the bar with this and said, is this vindictive prosecution? Analyze, I would tell you after I left the exam, woo, we got an easy one right there. I was worried that we were going to get a complicated fact pattern. So look,
let me say one thing before you leave, because sometimes we lose the thread for our audience, and I don't want to. The fact that he had to use Lindsey Halligan to bring these prosecutions, let's remember this for a minute. There was not one career prosecutor in the hallowed halls of the Eastern District of Virginia, which is one of the top 5 prosecutor offices in terms of reputation in the Department of Justice. Not one would bring the prosecutions that you and I are now talking about. They had to think of what they had to do to get these prosecutions. This goes to your point. They had to create, like it was a Halloween costume, a federal prosecutor out of somebody who had never been. And within moments of her, literally hours of her becoming a federal prosecutor, going in and getting and walking the high wire to get 2 indictments that she had never done before. She wasn't even a criminal lawyer before. She wasn't even a criminal defense lawyer before, let alone a prosecutor. And this is what they had to do. And now they got to try to defend her because, again, I don't see anybody stepping up. You know, they could have solved this problem by having people co-sign the indictment with her. Like when Alina Habba, all of a sudden you saw Todd Blanche started signing a lot of papers in the District of New Jersey to try to save a lot of her crap. Where was Pam Bondi? Where's Stan Woodward? Where's Todd Blanche? Where is Janine Pirro? Where is anyone in the inner circle for Donald Trump signing these indictments or backing up these indictments or sitting with her to do it? Nowhere. They have left her, I guess for deniability standpoint, completely twisting in the wind and doing this last minute ad hoc make weight argument to try to save her. But I want people to remember, no self-respecting U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney would ever have brought these prosecutions.
Also, if it was brought in a timely manner and ultimately someone was deemed to be unlawfully appointed, which again, there's no real historical precedent for that happening because you do it the right way. But if that were to happen, then all you would say is, okay, well, it's without prejudice. So we're going to go back and we'll go back to the grand jury and we'll get the indictment again. But because, at least as it relates to the Comey case, the statute of limitations expired, a disqualification serves as a dismissal there. The analysis will be a little bit different under Letitia James because of the statute of limitations. Will it result in a full dismissal? But we'll keep you posted every step of the way here in the MeidasTouch Network. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Epstein emails, not to be confused with the Epstein files. Now, I could see it be confusing because you would say this is the pretty devastating stuff. So is that what they're hiding? No, the stuff that they're hiding is probably much worse than this bad stuff and probably serves as the connective tissue. We'll analyze it and we'll talk about how does this relate to what Ghislaine Maxwell told Todd Blanche and Todd Blanche's questioning of Ghislaine. Seems like a lot of lies were being told in that interview that they had. That and more. Before we go, a reminder, before we come back from a quick break, a reminder, Michael Popok's new law firm is representing the legal AFers. Give a call and check out Michael Popok's law firm, 877-POPOK-AF for a free case review today, or go to thepopokfirm.com if you or somebody you know has been injured in a catastrophic accident, a bad car accident, a bad trucking accident. If you know anybody who was killed in a bad accident and is a wrongful death case, the consultation's free. So don't be shy. Reach out. Popok's representing a lot of our listeners and viewers. So give a call there. Also subscribe to the Legal AF Substack and also subscribe to Legal AF YouTube channel, which I want to get 1 million subscribers.
950,000.
Well, we're there. We'll get it. But help us get to 1 million. Help us get that 1 million number this year. We'll be right back after our first quick break of the show.
Ever wake up sweaty, freezing, or just plain uncomfortable? The temperature in your bedroom can make or break your sleep. That's why I switched to Miracle Made sheets. They're inspired by NASA technology and use silver-infused temperature-regulating fabric to help you sleep perfectly all night long. With Miracle Made, you'll sleep at the perfect temperature. Whether you run hot or cold, these sheets keep you in the comfort zone from the moment you crawl in to the moment you wake up. And here's what I love. They stay cleaner longer. Thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle Made sheets stay fresh up to 3 times longer than regular sheets, meaning fewer odors, fewer wash cycles, and way less laundry. They're luxuriously comfortable too, smooth, breathable, and soft like what you'd find in a 5-star hotel, but without the luxury price tag. So upgrade your sleep or give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. You'll save over 40%. And when you use promo code LegalAF, you'll get an extra 20% off plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an amazing gift. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. That's trymiracle.com/legalaf. Code LegalAF at checkout. Thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode. Hey, everybody, I got to tell you, I've been obsessed with my shave around my beard lately, and it's all thanks to the brand new Harry's Plus razor. Before this, my old razors would dull way too fast and always left my neck irritated, but Harry's Plus genuinely feels like a major step up in craftsmanship, the kind of quality you notice from the very first stroke. Harry's just launched their most advanced razor yet. 10 years of research and development went into this thing. That's a full decade dedicated to engineering the smoothest possible shave. You got an advanced pivoting system that helps you reach all those tricky angles, refined blade technology that glides easily without clogging, and this weighted metal handle, their heaviest ever, which gives you total control. And even with all that innovation, Harry's Plus still costs less than Gillette Fusion. You're getting a premium shave without the premium markup. But here's the best part. It's risk-free. If you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right, no questions asked. So, for a limited time, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/legalaf. It comes with all the new Harry's Plus razor, a 5-blade cartridge, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover. Just head to harrys.com/legalaf to grab yours. And when they ask you where you heard about them, please tell them we sent you.
Welcome back to Legal AF, and thank you to our sponsors. You know, Popok, there are some news days that feel like a blip, and there are some that feel like a boom. To be fair, a blip in a Trump news day should be a boom in normal times, because those days where it's blip, 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 are really bad things that would likely cause one to invoke the 25th Amendment or impeach him, whether it's the criminality, the self-dealing, destruction of East Wing, you go on and on and on, war crimes. But then there are just some things that break in a different way. And we cover it all here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. But a boom was definitely the release of these Epstein emails from the estate. Now, Democrats discovered that the estate held a lot of these emails and that it would be able to turn it over if they were requested. This is different and distinct from what's the Epstein files, although my guess would be in the Epstein files that the DOJ has, because the FBI did reviews and analysis of the computers and the email accounts and took all of that as evidence. My guess is that a lot of these emails are in the files also, but the files are terabytes and terabytes of information. So to me, these emails would still be a very small subset of the damaging information in the file. So as this graphic shows, I'll read it to our audio listeners. The Democrats on the Oversight Committee released 3. They could have released all 20,000, but the Democrats released 3 ones right away from their official account. And it showed that Epstein told Ghislaine Maxwell that Donald Trump spent hours at my house, knew about the girls, And he's the dog that hasn't barked yet. Notable time frame of that one is in 2011. The other messages were back and forths with Michael Wolff, who's been on the MeidasTouch Network, and Wolff has basically said to him in this back and forth that, like, you have the information to take him down. Why don't you just come out with the information and let people know about it? Ghislaine Maxwell was on that 2011 email with Epstein. So then the Republicans, we'll get into it, I think, because they wanted to stop a situation where Democrats would release a few every day from here on out. They just released all of the 20,000, and they knew how devastating it was going to be, because the Democrats could have released all 20,000. The Democrats in the House Oversight just did those 3. And then as we saw the other emails released throughout the day, they were even worse than those 3. So you may be saying, well, why the Democrats only released those 3? I think it's because they were saving the other ones for later. And then the Republicans knew that. And then that's why they released all 20,000. Go back to that last graphic, though, where you have memes being sent between Epstein and his brother saying, would you trust this man with your daughter? And it's a photo of Donald Trump. So the head of the largest child sex trafficking ring in world history is sending images of Donald Trump saying, would you trust this man with your daughter? So you take a look at the 23,000 plus emails that the estate turned over to the House Oversight Committee, thanks to the great work of the Democrats who were able to get those emails. I think there's like 2,300 email threads. I think the exact number, I may have overstated it by a few hundred before, but who's counting? I guess I am counting. But more than half of the email threads have Donald Trump's name on it. And when you go through these emails, I mean, there's just some really, really kind of bad stuff on there. I mean, you have this one email where it talks about Epstein being close with Steve Bannon still. Epstein and his brother, Epstein's like to the brother, all good. Bannon is with me. And then Mark Epstein, Epstein's brother, says, ask him, I guess saying Bannon, ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba. Is Bubba Bill Clinton? Is Trump blowing people? Like, what does that even mean? You have emails that go back and forth where Epstein writes to his lawyers back in 2012, have one of your cronies asked to see the mortgage to Mar-a-Lago, cash from electricians union. That was the bag man, later made an exec at the public company, and the $30 million loan from the casino to Donald Trump, backdated. Seems to be a lot of intimate knowledge of how Trump was moving money around. There's this email from 2019. This was, a few months before Epstein gets ultimately arrested, indicted, and dies. He sends this email to himself first, and then he sends it to Michael Wolff. And this is consistent with what Michael Wolff reported on the MeidasTouch Network. Like, Wolff didn't say that it was in an email, right? But Wolff 100% said what Epstein told him. I mean, he was an accurate historian of what Epstein told him about the 2004 purchase by Donald Trump of the Abe Gossman WPB West Palm Beach home for $40 million that Epstein was going to buy for $30 million. And Epstein was the stalking horse bidder at $36 million. And then, which means that if someone bought it for more, Epstein would get a fee for being able to go up to $36 million. Then he talks about Rybalov in this email, the Russian oligarch who then bought the house from Trump a few years later for $95 million. And then Epstein's talking about in this email how Donald Trump likely avoided paying capital gains taxes on the sale by saying that he did $20 to $30 million in renovations. And I mean, it's a very, very detailed stuff. And that also confirms that August 23rd, 2007 email between Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein, where they talk about, you have to assume they, being the feds, went to Donald Trump, then Gossman, the docs in WPB, Pascal, etc., which Michael Popok and we've always analyzed that and said that's referring to that property that Rybalov bought from Trump with that 50 million profit or capital gains that would be added. So I think we were spot on in the analysis there. And then there's also messages about Epstein saying in emails right before the Helsinki meeting between Putin and Trump that he had been advising the Russian government on how to deal with Donald Trump, one of several cases in which he wielded his connections to try to influence the course of foreign affairs. And Epstein says, look, I've been giving advice to Vitaly Chutkin about Trump, another Russian oligarch, but he died. Let me help Sergei Lavrov out before the Helsinki meeting. This took place about a month before Helsinki. And so it raises questions, right? Was Epstein providing compromise to the Russians about Donald Trump? Was he the source of that? And was he getting paid for that? Was that one of the ways he was making money? I'll remind you all that when Ghislaine Maxwell was interviewed by Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney turned deputy attorney general, the number 2 at the DOJ, just to remind you, here's what she said during the interview. It's on audio recording.
I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Michael Popok, where do we begin? I mean, if you were to tell me Russians, all the other stuff, there's Epstein's, you don't realize how dirty he's a dirty man, Epstein says, dirty Don doing that, talks about other instances with young people, unclear their ages, and the Trump running into walls because he was chasing the girls. Like you don't really get you don't really get worse than the. I mean, there's probably worse than the files, but this is bad stuff.
Yeah, and let me pick up from there. You did such a great detailed job of a lot of these emails. That the 5,000 foot level is that this very small, maybe less than 10% of what is in what we refer to as the Epstein cover-up files that are with Donald Trump, that are with his Department of Justice, that are with his FBI. That alone, if that was just what we call an audit, where you don't look at every document, but you take like a little dipstick and you go, oh, let me just put my hand in here and see what this is all about. Whoa. That alone, from what was the 3 that the Democrats and the oversight, the MAGA too, House Oversight Committee, 3 leaked out, putting a lie right away in a very succinct way to Donald Trump's constant new refrain that he had no real relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He didn't know anything about the girls. And to put a lie to Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony. But let me back up for a minute. Why did this all happen this week? Reopening of the government, sure. Donald Trump thought that the rotting body of the Epstein scandal in his closet would somehow not be there when the government reopened, and it is, and it reignited, and it blew back up in his face because he's not leveling with the American people. The David Schuster's report from 4 days ago is that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who Donald Trump has now renounced, and Boebert and Massey and others were given a briefing by the Department of Justice, probably similar to the one that Pam Bondi gave in May to Donald Trump, and were told that the Epstein files that the DOJ and FBI do have are worse for Donald Trump than that were first suspected. So you have that. You have Donald Trump not working for America on the return of the government. His first order of business was to shove Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room and have her be abused by Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and others to convince her not to sign or not to support the discharge petition to get the Epstein release of files bill to the House floor, which is now never going to happen based on the new phony investigation that's been open. I'll talk about that in a minute. So Donald Trump is abusing women who have professed that they were victims in their own lives of sexual abuse, who were members of Congress, in order to get them to continue to cover up the Epstein files. And that backfired. Nancy Mace has said, look, I think she's a disgusting human being, but on this particular issue, she's not relenting, at least on the signature on the for the discharge petition. Neither is, this sweet talking of Marjorie Taylor Greene that Donald Trump is doing is not going to get her to back off her call for the Epstein files. She's dug in too deep there. And Boebert, who I disagree with on everything, she came out and said, thanks for the meeting, but I'm not interested in changing my vote, so to speak. So you had all that happening. Then you had, in the same week leading into our reporting tonight, you had Ghislaine Maxwell lobbying again to have a commutation of her sentence. Can I get out early? Even though I'm in the Beverly Hills wing of this prison now, can I get out early? And that roared back into view. And then you had the House release the email that is a kibitz between Maxwell and her business partner, lover, co-conspirator in child sex trafficking, Epstein, who never thought these emails would see the light of day. Just talking about Donald Trump being in his Epstein's house 4 hours with a redacted victim's name, who our illustrious press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, thought it was helpful to both out the person, whether it was Virginia Giuffre or not, who was underage at the time, and then say, see, transparency. He spent several hours in a convicted child sex trafficker's house with an underage girl, but we know who the girl is, so it's okay, because that girl who's now took her own life because of all the psychological abuse she suffered, she once said that Donald Trump didn't do anything. Okay, we're not going to go into now the psychoanalytics of survivors of sexual abuse when they're children and what they say or don't say in the future. That doesn't explain the hours in the house. And it doesn't explain the clip that you just played of Ghislaine Maxwell lying to Todd Blanche, who willingly wanted her to lie. Let's be frank. It's not that he wasn't taken advantage of. They fired Maureen Comey, who was the only prosecutor on planet Earth who knew the Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein file like the back of her hand. When you go in to do an interview of a convicted child sex trafficker, you bring with you, if you're giving her immunity to make sure she's telling the truth, you bring in the truth serum. You bring in the prosecutor that handled the case, because Todd Blanche had no interest in learning the case. He had no ability in just the several days to read the files. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of pages and exhibits. But he didn't want to. He purposely buried his head in the sand. They fired Maureen Comey a couple of weeks before. He goes in with nothing, because Comey would have said to him, she's lying. There's an email. There's a document. There's an audio. There's a whatever. But he didn't want that in his ear. He didn't want her writing notes next to him. So that when she said, no, he's a lovely man, I don't even think he was ever in the house. The email that we launched with, you and I have done a lot of commentating on, says, I can't, the dog that hasn't barked is Donald Trump in my house with blank. All right, make it Virginia Giuffre. Okay. A girl for hours in my house. And she writes, Ghislaine Maxwell, I was thinking the same thing. Could she have forgotten an email from 2011? Maybe. But when you have a president of the United States that needs a convicted child sex trafficker to vouch for his morality and credibility, that's how low that you have sunk. So we had that happen. Then you have the release of these emails, which show that Jeffrey Epstein has the goods on Donald Trump. All the emails that you identified. The new ones about Bannon coaching Epstein, Michael Wolff coaching Epstein. It all is premised on Epstein having the goods, got the drop on Donald Trump. He's got extortive stuff about his involvement. You can't extort somebody if you don't have the photos, the emails, the pictures, the testimony. So that's what Donald Trump has always been worried about. having been briefed by Pam Bondi back in May. So they came up with a new strategy and we're still going through you and I and the brothers. We're going to be doing a lot of reporting because it's 23,000 pieces of data we got to go through. That's why it's coming out a little bit drips and drabs. But the takeaway is this is a small tip of the iceberg of what lies beneath, which is still with Donald Trump. Now, here's what they figured out they're going to try to do. They figured out that if they reignite and reactivate a criminal investigation after Pam Bondi 4 months ago said there's nothing to see here and did a closeout memo with the FBI in which they said there's nothing to prosecute for anybody. Done. Of course, that led everybody lost their mind when they wrote that closeout memo. Kash Patel goes to Congress under oath and says in response to friendly questioning from Senator Kennedy about, are you still going after people that are in high places that were involved in the child sex trafficking thing? We would if we had anything to go after, but there's no one else involved but Jeffrey Epstein. Case closed. And now, 4 months later, because Donald Trump decided that if he has an active investigation, I'm sure this is a top language special, if we reactivate the investigation, then we can say we can't turn over the files because they're a part of an active investigation. This is the cover-up of the cover-up. And they're using Jay Clayton. And I wanted to bring back the conflicts of interest that I started our recording with, our show with tonight. There's a conflict, multiple levels of conflict with this new investigation that Pam Bondi just started. There's a little thing called the special counsel rule under the Code of Federal Regulation that effectively says that a attorney general shall appoint a special counsel where there is an obvious conflict of interest. She works for Donald Trump. Trump is telling her to open an investigation to block the files and leave him out of it. That sounds like a conflict of interest. And the public perception of what is going on with the justice would be undermined if she didn't appoint a special counsel. Even Steve Bannon has publicly demanded that a special independent counsel be appointed to look at, if they're going to open the files to a special counsel, he looks at everything, wherever it goes, with subpoena power and witnesses, and maybe sits down with Donald Trump, not a phony handoff to Jay Clayton in the Southern District of New York, who's a golfing buddy of Donald Trump going back to his first administration. And there's another conflict because Jay Clayton used to be, and I don't even know if he's still getting comp from it, used to be a partner at Sullivan and Cromwell. Sullivan and Cromwell is currently representing Donald Trump in all of his appeals of his criminal conviction, anything related to E. Jean Carroll, and the fraud case. So Sullivan and Cromwell's former partner, Jay Clayton, golf buddy for Donald Trump, is now going to be the guy who's only with blinders on, only going to look at the Democrats. This is all a ruse to then have Carolyn Leavitt and Pam Bondi at the Future Oversight Committee hearing say, we'd love to release the files, but as you know, there's an active criminal investigation.
More than that, even when Pam Bondi sits before the Senate and the House at her next hearing, and she's asked all of these questions, she's now given herself the cover to say, I can't, in
right.
a way, she'll go, I can't answer that, Senator. There is an active investigation going on. I'm not allowed to comment. I can't comment on that. It's an active investigation. Now, by the way, play this clip back after she does it. I would like to answer that, but I am not entitled to answer that because she knows that Kash Patel, Bongino, they're going to get subpoenaed to show up.
Active.
It's to also cover their own ass when they have to testify, and that's exactly how they're going to avoid answering the question. So we're previewing what their corrupt strategy is. Two other points that I just want to make quickly. What was interesting about that Todd Blanche interview, it's kind of how I would do a deposition for the first hour and a half. But then after getting the person to say all of the things that I knew were lies, and kind of lulling him into that sense of security that, okay, you got that. And I wouldn't do it mean at first, right? I would have them tell their whole story. I go, okay, want to go back? We'll take a lunch break. Then I'd have all the emails ready to go. Remember earlier when you said this? Let me just show you this email. So that wasn't true, was it? Well, what'd you mean in this email? What'd you mean in this email? What'd you mean in this email? Now, what Blanche did was just part one, but didn't do the other stuff that you would always do in a situation like that if you were having an interview with somebody like a Ghislaine Maxwell or someone in that type of situation. Okay, the other point I want to make is that there is something in the law called an adverse inference. And an adverse inference is an instruction that a judge gives to a jury if one of the parties to the litigation is not turning over the documents and is hiding something. And often you can find out that one side is not turning over the things because sometimes it's hard to know. Are they turning it over or not turning it over? Because you're able to subpoena a third party where you get a subset of records and you go, well, clearly they're hiding stuff because look what we just got from another repository of this information. So what the judge will tell the jury is, as a result of this party to the case not sharing with you the information that is in their custody and control, you could assume the worst. Assume that the reason that they're hiding this is because what they're hiding would be far more damaging than what they want to produce. So to me, we are clearly in adverse inference territory when it comes to the Trump regime. We could only assume that his involvement with Epstein is as bad as our worst suspicions of what went down, because why else would you be hiding it? If this was a court case, in my opinion, that instruction would be given. Now, the final point I want to make, Popok, and I said that I was only going to do 2 points, but let me give you a third point right here. It's interesting to me when the Trump regime's talking point was, well, the Democrats are just cherry picking these documents. Well, first off, 23,000 documents is not a whole lot of cherry. There's a lot there's at least 10% out there now, but let's be of what I think is the Epstein files. Before there was about 2%. Now we've got about 10%. I still think there's about 90% left. But usually when someone makes an allegation of cherry picking, it's against the party that controls the cherries, right? That has the information, and they're just turning over things that make them look good. It's usually not the other way, where a party that doesn't have access to the information is just producing whatever it is that they have to get that out. So if Trump wants to avoid the allegations of Democrats are cherry picking, well, you control the cherry trees. So you can turn over all the cherries, and then you can't argue cherry picking. That's the whole point there. And that's why the cherry picking argument for the entity that controls the documents, that's never something that you would hear in court. Now, we have a lot to discuss also on how this corruption, not just MAGA Republicans helping Trump cover up this child sex trafficking ring, and can you believe that that's what we're talking about? Like that the government right now is so overtly covering up the largest child sex trafficking ring in human history right before our eyes so flagrantly. But then the Republican senators, I think they know the gravy train may be ending soon. So they're literally writing laws just to themselves as senators, saying if you are a senator, you get to claim at least $500,000 based on a new law that we're going to make up. We'll cover that when we come back from our last quick break. But a reminder to everybody, Michael Popok has a new law firm, although perhaps it's not all that new anymore because you launched it about a year ago at this point. But it's new in the scheme of things. And he's representing people who listen to this and view this. So if you have a case, if you've been injured in an accident, call 877-POPOK-AF. Or go to thepopokfirm.com. That's thepopokfirm.com, or call 877-POPOK-AF if you've been involved in a catastrophic or serious car accident or trucking accident, or you know somebody who was killed or harmed in an accident. Tell them to reach out to the Popok firm. The consultation is free. Subscribe to the Legal AF YouTube channel. Get them 1 million subscribers. Subscribe to the Legal AF Substack. All right. Last quick break of the show. Home stretch. We'll talk about Republicans writing laws so that they can enrich themselves on the taxpayer dime. We'll be right back.
I want to take a moment to talk about something that has genuinely improved my daily routine, the Tushy bidet. When I installed mine, it took less than 10 minutes, required no plumber, and completely changed how I think about cleanliness and comfort in the bathroom. It looks sleek, it fits perfectly with my setup, and I've never felt cleaner or more refreshed. The Tushy bidet is an everyday luxury that instantly upgrades your bathroom experience. It's the kind of gift that's practical, thoughtful, and something people truly use and appreciate, whether it's for family, friends, or even yourself. Remember, a hole is only a naughty word if you wipe. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code LegalAF at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code LegalAF. This holiday season, give the gift of comfort, cleanliness, and confidence with Tushy. You try to tune in just for the highlights. Next thing, you're reacting to every alert and headline. IndaCloud provides a way to step back and find calm amid the noise. IndaCloud is your online cannabis dispensary offering gummies, flower, pre-rolls, and more. All products are federally legal, DEA certified, lab tested, and shipped discreetly. When the headlines won't stop, at least your mind can. Sleep gummies to help unwind after a long day. Social snacks for when discussions become overwhelming. Dispensary grade edibles for moments when you need to disconnect. This is how you take a break without missing out. If you're 21 years or older, visit indacloud.co and use code LegalAF for 40% off your first order plus free shipping. This is IndaCloud's biggest sale of the year, lasting all month long, because peace of mind shouldn't expire in half a day. That's indacloud.co, code LegalAF, 40% off, free shipping, and a calmer experience reserved for listeners. indacloud.co, code LegalAF. Please enjoy responsibly, and thank you to IndaCloud for sponsoring today's episode.
We are in the home stretch of Legal AF, and we're going to talk about how Republican senators snuck in a provision in the continuing resolution that has been signed into law ending the government shutdown, where they will be paying themselves at least $500,000, maybe $1 million or more, at least to these 8 senators who claim that they've suffered an injury as a result of special counsel Jack Smith issuing lawful subpoenas authorized by federal courts in connection with investigations relating to the January 6th insurrection, where this group of 8 senators, Republican senators, were having conversations with Trump and the White House, which is why their phone numbers were flagged during a very short period of time. The subpoena by Jack Smith was like limited in time to just the immediate events relating to the January 6th insurrection. This was not wiretapping or eavesdropping. The contents of text messages were not reviewed. The contents of phone calls were not heard. Literally just the digits showed up the way you may see in like a phone record, the number, the length of the call, outgoing, incoming, like that is it. And the Republicans have said, this is Arctic frost. And they've misrepresented what it is by saying they're listening on us. No one's listening to you. No one listened to you. It's literally the digits. Now, you may be saying, well, why, if there was a claim, why couldn't they file a lawsuit under existing law? Because there is no claim where you can sue the Department of Justice when a federal judge issues a lawful subpoena. Like, it comes from a court. So, like, what would be the injury? What would exist? And by the way, if there was an existing law that was violated and Jack Smith violated it, I would say, great. If he violated some existing law, invoke the law and then sue him for it, or invoke the law and hold him accountable for it. Right? I have no problem with that. But there was no law that he broke because he followed the law. And the judges followed the law. And so the Republican senators, while taking away health care from 20 million Americans, maybe more, because that's what this continuing resolution is going to do, built in a new law where they say, notwithstanding it being a valid subpoena, notwithstanding that the statute of limitations would have expired, notwithstanding that no law was in place at the time. We're going to create a law in November 2025 where we will retroactively backdate it and say that the law was in effect at the time that the subpoenas were issued, so that it was now actually was unlawful. And Jack Smith should have known, should have been a time traveler and figured this out, that they've been injured and emotionally harmed because their digits, their phone numbers, showed up in response to a subpoena regarding who was calling Donald Trump right around the January 6th insurrection. And then in the law, they've also stated that the government, because it would be these Republicans getting the money from taxpayers, right? They're suing essentially the DOJ. And if they sued the DOJ would assert defenses. But in the law, the Republican senators say the government hereby waives all of its defenses and can't assert any defenses. So a new law, retroactive, based on validly issued subpoenas, and then depriving the DOJ of even mounting a defense if it wanted to. In other words, a direct payout to Republican senators. Let's bring in Michael Popok to break it down. I mean, this is, while Americans are starving, while Americans can't afford things, while Americans are being psychologically tortured, while Republicans and senators and Congress members of all parties have the golden standard of health care, and we've seen these members not work for such a long period of time. They've now built in $1 million, $1.5 million, $500,000, depending on each time the number shows up, that's another claim. So $5 million that taxpayers are going to be paying these senators millions of dollars just to the senators. I mean, that's the craziest concept I've ever heard of.
So the Senate Majority Leader Thune, remember that name. We have to make like crimes against humanity playing cards that people can keep, like the military used to use in Iraq to be able to figure out who to go after. We need to make cards as we get closer to the midterms. We're less than a year away. Senator John Thune shoved this into the Senate bill. As you said, they weren't helping Americans, 42 million of them who were starving to death and were entitled to food supplement payments under SNAP. They were actually fighting to not make payments to veterans and disabled people and babies and children and the rest below the poverty line. But they struck on this great idea to give themselves a $500,000 payday because 7 or 8 of them were likely involved with the overthrow of democracy. A subpoena went out for their records to Verizon and other carriers. It was approved by a federal judge. As you said, it wasn't a wiretap. It just shows you basic vocabulary eludes MAGA. What's a tariff? They just don't understand. Texas says, I'm going to tariff all the New Yorkers who leave. If they don't leave now, Mamdani gets elected. Do you understand what a tariff is? It's a wiretap. I've been involved with wiretapping cases. That's when you intercept in real time an electronic or actual conversation and you listen in, you eavesdrop. It's an eavesdropping statute. This is not a wiretap. This was a pen register. It's a phone register. This is like getting the old good old, you ever look at your phone bill that's now available electronically? Tells you this phone call at this time to this phone number at this length. That was it. If they needed to go further, it was only for 3 days. It was Jan 5, Jan 6, and Jan 7. It was just to see who was talking to who as they were trying to come up with their conspiracy board about the delaying the certification of the election, in which senators and House members may have been involved with that, for which they, not being a president, likely did not have immunity. The only immunity that they really enjoy is speech and debate. And there was an argument that this didn't fall into any of that. That's how we got here. This create a payday, right? Create a bingo card that's already filled out so they can get a $500,000 payoff was so offensive that even MAGA Mike Johnson doesn't like it and has claimed that he's going to work to strike it, although he didn't. But it was that bad politically because Johnson worries about the politics more than the senators do because he's always running for re-election along with the rest of the House. Got a major election coming up. You would think these people think they're in power forever. It's like Putin, like he gets 105% of the vote. They're not going to be in power forever. And there's going to be a new Senate and a new House in like a year. And at the rate they're going, playing into the hands of the Democrats to give them their talking points that they need. Do you want a president who starves babies? No. Do you want a heartless president who doesn't care about Americans and even in red states? No. Do you want a president who is trying to destroy the American economy single-handedly to benefit himself and those around him and his family? No. Do you want a president that's rewarding people that participated in one way or the other on Jan 6 by giving them a $500,000 payday while you pay whatever you're paying in taxes and your state funding is all cut off? No. This is what the Democrats are going to have. This is what we call in the business a gift that the Democrats have to exploit when it comes time to campaign. And everybody that's running against somebody with an R next to their name has to use this information. We'll do our part. I promise you. MeidasTouch and Legal AF will be unrelenting in its coverage, in its exposure, in its exposés, in its analysis and commentary around these issues from now until the election day and beyond. The crowds will do their part. The Democratic and liberal and independents who are taking to the streets in numbers. I'm going to touch at the end here. 22 members of the clergy wearing their cloth, wearing their outfits, were thrown to the ground by federal Trump forces while they were peacefully protesting in front of an ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois in the last day. As the Pope, who is the first U.S. Pope and a Chicago resident, decided to weigh in about this is the time for deep reflection about the inhumane migrant and immigration policies of the Trump administration, which triggered, we now have a new thing, Ben. We have church versus state, not church, not separation of church and state. I don't want them separated now. We need the church and its leaders, the agnostics and its leaders, the politicians and its leaders, the attorneys general and its leaders, and the crowds of people to rise up now.
Popok, don't you find it interesting that last year when we were doing legal analysis and Supreme Court analysis and going back to the early beginnings of Legal AF, it was all of these right-wing cases to force prayer into schools and now when there's prayer being done outside of detention facilities and you have priests showing up trying to conduct mass or whatever and just be there. And now the priests are banned. They are shot
thrown to the ground.
They're shot, they're gassed, and they are arrested. And so it to me, it tells you everything you need to know about MAGA.
Is that a good look for the Christian right as they're trying to prop up this presidency?
I think for them, they feast on this, we all know this dystopian, violent form of however they're interpreting Christianity, from a white nationalistic lens. And to me, the way I try to analyze this always is religion, no religion, whether you're Catholic, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, whatever religion
Jewish.
You are, atheist, you name whatever, or just don't even have a thought about it. Sometimes not we in MeidasTouch Network, but the collective, the way press reports, just stops reflecting on the morality of things like good versus bad, and so much conduct, and we've talked about it throughout. Senators paying themselves money based on BS claims, Trump's appearance in the Epstein list on their files and covering up a child sex trafficking ring, Bondi's behavior. It's bad humans. It's bad behavior. These are bad people without character and with low morals. And sometimes we just have to say, these are not good humans. These are bad, evil people. Sorry, Popok.
No, you didn't. Why? Because you stepped on my rant? No, that's okay. I mean, it reminded me when we don't have the clip, I don't think, but when the reporter on Air Force One asked Donald Trump about Epstein and about the email, what did it mean that you were in a house with a girl for hours in Epstein? And then he gave some crazy answer. That's why we're opening an investigation. And then she tried to ask another question, and he attacked the reporter. Silence.
Quiet.
Stop. Quiet. Stop. I don't understand how that, combined with the polling numbers, is indicating to the Republican Party that they are on a winning strategy for the midterms. I'm sorry. I try to think. You and I are very skilled at being lawyers. We pride ourselves as like getting inside the head of the adversary, and it makes us better lawyers. I don't understand anything that's going on. I have a new theory. I'm going to run it by you here at the end. Donald Trump is on the shortest of time horizons. He knows he's going to be lame duck. He is acting like somebody who thinks that his grip on power is slipping. When it comes to the midterms, it's going to be worse. So he's trying to do as maximum damage, and he's got his coattails. He's got everybody on his coattails, but he doesn't care about the future, both biologically, chronologically, and politically. Because he's already got what he wanted. He got his immunity. He got his money. He's making billions and billions of dollars as a president. He got his retribution. He got his pound of flesh. And he's acting, for me, he's acting like somebody who knows his time is short in terms of the presidency and the grip on power. And the midterms will prove it. And that's, for me, what I'm observing when I'm trying to make sense of his conduct, which would be political suicide for anybody else.
Yeah. And I think now more than ever, though, is when we all need to push more. Like, I see this as an incredible opportunity to get the truth out, to try to open people's eyes. And I think one of the things that the Epstein files did was it created one of the first kind of cracks within MAGA that then at least opened their minds to start seeing that there are other cracks, and those cracks started percolating as well. Then you had Donald Trump going on Laura Ingraham and saying that, Chinese students are much better and superior than American students, and that's why, American colleges should have 600,000 Chinese students. And then Laura Ingram's even like, but, American students, they could be good also, right? And he's like, no, they can't. Let me look. There's a way you can embrace the idea of international students, but also say we need to make sure we have a big priority on American students and making sure Americans are educated and have the best education system. But he goes, no, Americans can't do it, right? There was the other statement that he gave and said, American workers are not capable of working the high-skilled jobs or factory jobs that we need foreign workers for. And look, there's a world where foreign workers, are needed and necessary. And we've seen how helpful, brain drain from other countries has been, and brain recipients the United States has been. Trump's policies have been the opposite, have actually harmed America as a place where people want to come to and study and be in. We've seen that, but we should also be figuring out too and prioritizing, American jobs and focusing on American jobs as well. So he makes those statements that, combined with the Epstein files, combined with, him talking about he doesn't know which part of his body he got an MRI on. I mean, remember when he was going to Mar-a-Lago again on the taxpayer dime, and he's asked, so, you got this MRI. He's like, look, I got the MRI. It was the best MRI. The doctor said they've never seen results as good as this MRI. And then he says, and so the reporter says, what part was it? Was it your brain? That was the question. Was it your brain? And he goes, look, I don't know what part I was on, okay? I don't know what body part they did it, okay? It's what people go and get. It's like, you don't know what part of your body an MRI was on? So you have that. And then you have him saying things are affordable and things are great and everything's amazing and things are cheaper and Thanksgiving's going to be 25% cheaper. And people know their Thanksgiving isn't 25% cheaper. It's more expensive. It's like, but Walmart said. Well, Walmart's working with you to say that, number one, it appears. But number two, they've included 14 items on the list versus 21 items that were on the list the previous year. And it used to be brand names the previous year. Now it's their Walmart saves, numbers. But then like the Trump regime, like, what about the DoorDash data? The DoorDash data says that the food's more affordable. First off, why you're the government and you're citing DoorDash data. And then when you dig into it, that's not what DoorDash even said. The prices are actually up, and we all know they're up. If you live in the real world and not at the Great Gatsby parties where half-naked women are in martini glasses in Mar-a-Lago, or at Club Rose Garden or Golden Ballrooms or whatever, like you exist in the world and you know what's happening. When they rip away your health care and now you have to pay 3 times or 4 times as much for your ACA, your Affordable Care Act premiums, because they don't extend the subsidies. And then they're like, the Democrats did this to you. People are like, no, they didn't. We see you doing it to us. We know you're doing it to us. So this is all happening kind of everywhere all at once right now. And we're in a place following the election 2 weeks ago where there's a real sense of momentum for truth and democracy, for validation, for fighting for all Americans. And we're in this together. And I think more and more people will start to see what this is about is the Trump and his right-wing oligarchs versus the rest of us, versus Americans. And the more we can recognize that and come together right now, I think that's so important. And what we use Legal AF for is to get out the truth to you, just to break it down for you. I mean, there's not all that much political things that I'm like, we're criticizing the fact that someone who's never been a federal prosecutor before has all of a sudden decided to become the top federal prosecutor in Virginia after all the Republicans said there's not enough evidence to do what Donald Trump wants to do. That's not cool. That's not good. Like, we shouldn't be a political thing to be like Republicans shouldn't create special laws for themselves, or Trump shouldn't be covering up a child sex trafficking ring. Like, what are we talking about here, folks? So that's my spiel before we go. Popok, anything you want to say to everybody?
No, I think we wrap. But other than to say, people always worry about my health and energy. I had a little bit of a cold that I came down with here. We are as energized and motivated as we've ever been. The energy level here on MeidasTouch and on Legal AF is off the charts in terms of on our side of the microphone. We see the enthusiasm on the other side in our audience, the fervent support of our audience, the growth of Legal AF in a record amount of time, where we are with our content. And it really is just so rewarding for me, I know for you too, to be a part of this movement that will take down a dictator. It will bring him to heel.
Everybody, make sure before you go, if you have a potential case, if you've been injured in a catastrophic car accident or a serious car accident or trucking accident, or you know somebody who has, give Michael Popok a call at 877 Legal AF. Give a call there, Popok AF. Call 877 Popok AF, or also go to thepopokfirm.com. One more time, 877 Popok AF is the phone number, or go to thepopokfirm.com. Also, make sure you subscribe to the Legal AF Substack and subscribe to the Legal AF YouTube channel. Let's get that YouTube channel 1 million subscribers. We're almost there, and I know we'll get there this year with your help. Legal AFers, stay in the fight. We're grateful for you. We're honored to have you fight with us shoulder to shoulder. Thank you to all of our sponsors. The discount codes for those sponsors are in the description below. Be sure to subscribe to Legal AF on audio podcasts, as well as right here on YouTube. If you just watch on YouTube and you want to listen to this in your car or while you're walking or whatever at home on audio, just go search Legal AF on audio and subscribe there as well. And If you want to see what me and Michael Popok look like to our audio listeners, you can always check us out on YouTube at the MeidasTouch YouTube account, and you can take a look at Michael Popok's daily videos at the Legal AF YouTube channel. Michael Popok, we appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, so much. Hit subscribe here. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great week. Let's keep fighting. Let's keep bringing more of the truth out there. We appreciate you, Legal AFers. Shout out Meidas Mighty.